Story 1. When an amputee is experiencing phantom limb pains, massaging their stump and then the space where the limb was actually helps reduce the pains, especially if the person is already on the maximum dosage of pain medications and cannot have any more. Hearing the hands against the sheets where the limb would be tricks the brain into thinking that it is still there, so it stops the nerves from overfiring as much. Story 2. Trying to describe otoliths or otoconia causing dizziness quickly in layman's terms sounds a lot like quackery, especially when you start talking about the treatment being an all-natural set of exercises that will help you realign your inner crystals and regain balance. Story 3. The effect on your dopamine receptors from fantasizing or imagining things. I forget the exact term. As it turns out, you can achieve a pretty high dopamine response from fantasizing, imagining, or talking about goals. This can provide your brain with enough happy chemicals to actually hinder your drive to go and achieve those things for real. This sounds unbelievable, but it's true. Story 4. You absorb more nutrients from cooked eggs than you do from raw eggs. People don't believe it because cooking eggs actually does reduce the amount of nutrients. However, cooking them changes the protein structures and makes it easier for your body to actually absorb them. It's called protein denaturation, and it increases the bioavailability of the proteins. Bioavailability describes what is actually available for your body to digest and absorb. More nutrients don't necessarily mean more bioavailability, and fewer nutrients don't necessarily mean less bioavailability. Story 5. Neuroplasticity is pretty crazy. Our brains rewire themselves to use new tools so we don't have to think as hard about using them. Picture writing your name and think about how your arm, hand, and fingers all move together to draw the letters. All that incredibly complex movement we don't even think about, our brains just do it. We can use tools like they are an appendage. Some people even learn to use new appendages or senses, like the third thumb thing from a while back, or the guy who plugged an antenna into his brain that lets him sense electromagnetic fields. Story 6. Ever heard of epigenetics? It sounds like pseudoscience with its talk of genes being turned on and off by environmental factors, but it is a legitimate field of study. It is all about how lifestyle and environment can influence gene expression without altering the DNA sequence itself. Story 7. In psychology, B.F. Skinner is considered the father of behaviorism, and he wrote a science fiction book called Walden 2 which featured some of this. What he is less known for today but was well known for back in his day was his air crib for babies. It was basically a ventilated and climate-controlled box enclosed by plexiglass. It was padded but similar to a doctor's chair with paper that rolls out and is replaced with new paper. In this case, it was rolled out for hygiene such as messes, and parents who bought and used one for their kids loved it because their kids were content and comfortable. But the masses and media thought it was crazy. They claimed Skinner was nuts and the air crib was basically a terrarium for children. Skinner invented it because his research determined that the main reason babies become upset and cry, besides being hungry, is that they are uncomfortably too warm or too cold. His research showed that if a baby has a perfectly controlled environment and is comfortable, it won't keep waking up at night crying, and parents will get more sleep. Plus, since you didn't need blankets and sheets, nor did the baby need all sorts of clothing to wear, parents didn't have to constantly do laundry. Again, critics ridiculed the air crib, claiming that it was a horrible Skinner box, which was a totally different thing he used for experiments. They even invented stories about babies dying or growing up crazy, and that Skinner's own daughter ended up committing suicide as a result of her being raised in an air crib. Which is funny because Skinner's daughter would later claim that she was very healthy and alive and had no horrible memories of the air crib. Ultimately, the thing that is interesting about the air crib is that it is really just a technological upgrade from the very thing most Finns put their babies in. When a woman in Finland gives birth, they are literally handed a folded-up cardboard box, and when they get home, they unfold it, put a little padding at the bottom, and that's it. No fancy, elaborate crib. A cardboard box. The Finns have one of the lowest infant mortality rates on the planet, 2.1 per 1,000 born. By comparison, the United States, Slovakia, United Arab Emirates, and Bosnia have nearly the exact same rate, around 5 to 5.1. You can't really buy an air crib anymore because no company is willing to associate itself with the constant criticism of the device, regardless of how successful it was to numerous couples in the 1940s and 50s. Story 8. Benign paroxysmal positional vertigo treatment is crazy amazing to me. So many things in physical therapy require a lot of time and effort, such as exercise and lifestyle changes, but benign paroxysmal positional vertigo is just like a series of head rotations and watching eye movements, and bingo, vertigo cured. Seems so woo-woo, but it is the closest thing to magic I've seen in my career. Story 9. The lead crime hypothesis suggests there was a significant increase in violent crime across many countries from the 1960s to the 1990s, which then declined. This pattern correlates with the introduction and subsequent removal of leaded gasoline. You can find various studies online that display a range of results on this topic. Additionally, there is an informative magazine article available that provides an updated roundup on the lead crime hypothesis as of 2018. Story 10. Seeing with your tongue is possible by wearing a special helmet equipped with a camera and an electric plate on your tongue that transmits low-voltage signals through the plate. The brain will interpret this information through the visual cortex. This technique has also been used to aid individuals with a malfunctioning cerebellum by helping them restore their balance. Story 11. Transcranial magnetic stimulation for depression. I told my doctor it sounded like pseudoscience once a long time ago, but I later found out that it really is a legitimate thing. I haven't actually done it myself, though, and I've heard personal reviews on both ends of the spectrum. Story 12. Duct tape occlusion therapy. Basically, you put duct tape on warts for a few weeks and they just straight up disappear. This sounds like the modern version of an old wives' tale, but it is a lot less painful than other methods. And a roll of duct tape costs practically nothing, so there isn't really any reason not to give it a try. The pseudoscience part is that the research on it is limited. Not a lot of pharmaceutical companies are queuing up to research the medical efficacy of duct tape, but it is kind of promising. It boils down to 3 studies, all of which have pretty significant methodological issues. A 2002 study found that it had a high rate of efficacy, 85%, compared to 60% for cryotherapy, but it did not have a control group and it gathered responses via phone interviews after the fact. As studies go, it is not the best design. 2 later studies failed to repeat the results of the first study, which would be pretty damning with regards to the whole scientific method thing, but they tested it using clear duct tape, which uses a different kind of adhesive, rubber to the standard gray acrylic tape. Why you would test an entirely different type of tape is beyond me, but there you go. This has resulted in people suggesting that it might have something to do with the specific adhesive used, as though it stimulates some kind of reaction in the skin that causes the body to attack the wart itself. Additionally, one of the other follow-up studies was criticized pretty harshly in peer review for making statements it couldn't back up. Ultimately, it is just a big gap in our knowledge, but there is at least some scientific evidence for it working. That said, anecdotally, I have found it works for me. I had a giant wart on the bottom of my foot for years, and within a few weeks of trying it out, it was gone completely. The really weird thing is that I only treated the wart on the ball of my foot and not the heel, and both of them healed up pretty much at the same rate. So, there is a study that says it has a high rate of effectiveness, and I have personally found it to work despite me thinking it sounds completely nonsensical before I tried it, but even now it feels entirely made up to me. Story 13. Mycelium. You are telling me the roots of mushrooms act as a big message delivery system that not only allows information to be sent large distances across a single specimen, but can also be used by connected trees to communicate with each other and swap nutrients. This is an oversimplification, and mycelium absolutely does not think or is sentient like humans do. However, I am not exaggerating just how implausible it all sounds. There are some amazing mushroom documentaries out there, and it still baffles me. Story 14. It's not so much pseudoscience as it is just good old-fashioned underfunding for research, but gut microbiome health is way more than just the health of one's gut. Story 15. I don't think this sounds like nonsense, but a lot of people I've explained it to look like they doubt me. Phantom pain due to physical opioid addiction. Essentially, if you actually injure your back and start taking opioids, your body learns that sending pain signals gets you to take opiates. Your body becomes physically and/or mentally dependent on the opiates and so continues sending pain signals long after the injury has healed. I was in a car accident and had to take opiates to sleep because my back would hurt after lying down for more than 4 or 5 hours. I also didn't realize the doctor my lawyer had referred me to was more or less a pill mill, so when I kept going in and saying I was still in pain, she just kept writing scripts. This is also decades ago when they were a lot more liberal with them. I tried cutting down to half as much, and my back would wake up killing me worse than it had in months. It wasn't until I did some research on my own and found out about this that I was able to get off of them. You basically just have to tough it out for a week or two. Took 10 days and my back was angry, but I've never had pain like I did from the accident again. I was probably on pain pills for at least a year longer than I needed to be. With all of the talk of the opioid crisis, I can't believe this isn't discussed more. Story 16, Visualizing and Mirror Neurons. Research has shown that visualizing is incredibly powerful. It activates both motor neurons and mirror neurons. Watching someone do a squat with good form and visualizing yourself executing that same motion with good form is almost the same to your brain as physically doing it. So, if you're working out or learning a dance, watch videos of other people doing it. Close your eyes and visualize yourself doing it, moving through the motion, and then when you go to do it, it will be easier. Story 17. Some vertigo is caused by loose crystals in your inner ear, and special head positional maneuvers can cure it almost immediately. It sounds really woo when you explain it that way, but the physiology behind it is pretty cool. Story 18. Time moves slower closer to the center of masses. So if you were to fly around the world, you're time traveling. For further reading, refer to the Haffel-Keating experiment. Story 19. The bacteria in your intestine exist to digest the foods you usually eat. If you stop eating those foods, the bacteria will die, so they send a message to your brain, causing you to crave those foods. If you're trying to give up French fries, for example, it will take about 4 weeks to kill all the bacteria accustomed to digesting that food, and you will continue to crave it while they live. It also may be possible to lose weight by getting a fecal transplant from a thin person. The only problem is, it is also possible to get a mental illness potentially from that same person, so they should be screened carefully. Story 20. Hippies will try to tell you that you need to do LSD or mushrooms to open your mind or heal yourself, but psychedelics under an experience guide are somewhere around 66% effective at curing post-traumatic stress disorder in veterans on the first experience. Additionally, psychedelics are amazingly effective, more than 50%, at treating alcoholism, nicotine addiction, and other antipsychotic disorders, such as anxiety and depression. Story 21. I'm no expert, but this is based on my first-hand experience. Taking vitamin D supplements makes me feel significantly less depressed. Like, I have the potential to be normal if I've consistently taken it. And if I haven't, I will definitely be depressed, even if everything else is going great. Now, vitamins aren't exactly pseudoscience. They are, in fact, actual science. But I had a hard time taking certain people seriously about them. But darned if it doesn't make a demonstrative difference in my life. Story 22. People getting PhDs to study fossilized feces, also known as coprolites. When I first heard about it, I thought it was a joke. After all, isn't a fossil organic material that has been replaced by minerals, so what good will it do to study the size and shape of stone turds? No, it's an actual respected field of physical anthropology that has contributed a great deal of knowledge to prehistory. Story 23. If you hold a pencil between your teeth, forcing your mouth into a grin-like shape, it will make you evaluate your mood more positively. Your brain responds to body movements and postures, and this way you can trick the brain into thinking you have been smiling all day. Story 24. Most of psychology and neurology might seem implausible when you first delve into it, and then you're confronted with an overwhelming amount of evidence. Take attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, for instance. For someone with ADHD, the reason they didn't accomplish a task can literally be, my brain didn't let me do it. And it's not nonsense. It's due to a phenomenon known as executive dysfunction, which describes the brain's inability to understand what or how to initiate a task among other challenges, leading to inaction. To an outsider, it may appear as laziness, with the individual seemingly just slacking off, scrolling through their phone or watching videos. However, internally, there's an entire dialogue of the person berating themselves to just get on with the task, yet they find it impossible. This struggle isn't limited to essential or trivial tasks. Individuals might also delay engaging in activities they enjoy, such as playing a video game or reading an engaging book. This experience can sometimes feel akin to locked-in syndrome, a condition where one is trapped inside their own body as a mere observer.